Hey, welcome to Secrets of the Transits, second edition, class 9, Rahu and Ketu transits. Always a favorite topic. Hopefully you'll learn something new. I actually added a bunch of new material, even if you've had this lesson previously. I just added some new material this morning and I sent it. Let's start with our Vedic chanting. Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Vakritunda Mahakaya, Suryakoti Samaprapa, Nirvigam Kurame Deva, Sarvakarisha Sarvada, Jnanamulam Guru Murti, Pujamulam Guru Padam, Mantramulam Guru Vakyam, Mokshamulam Guru Kripa, Om Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Richoma, Amritam Gamaya, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karva Vahai Tejasvina Vatitamastu Ma Vivishai Vahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Aditya Samaye Mangalai Buraya Cha Kuru Shukrishi Nibischa Rahave Ketave Namaha. Learning the great ones, Lord Krishna, Saraswati, Vedavyasa, my spiritual tradition, all my great judges, teachers. Okay. So just a heads up for your calendar. Next week, I guess we can go back to noon. There's even a chance I may start moving class up a little bit, so we can get off a little bit earlier here in the Midwest, and I can spend more time with my wife in the afternoon. But I'll let you know about that. It's 9 o'clock Pacific time, which is not too bad. So there's no class on July 22nd. I'm taking a retreat. Either we'll do a live makeup on a Sunday, or I still have a bunch of recordings to send you, but there will be no class on July 22nd, but there's always recorded material to study. Hopefully you're listening to the 4 or 5 tapes that I've sent already. I know when, it's hard to fit them in, but they are part of the class, and we may get to review them quickly, but we will not get to do those lessons. Okay. Help my wife out here. Okay, so anyway, welcoming Affy, and I haven't seen Elizabeth. I think she's been really busy traveling. Catherine's here. Christina's here. She's in Newfoundland for this month, so that's really good. And Christina is not here. Renee is not here today. Elisabetta is actually not in the class, but Talia's here, and Laura is here, and Deanna is here, and Carolyn is not here, and Alice is here. Okay, so I think we have, and Maria's not here yet. She came late last week, so we'll see what happens. Okay, great. Okay, so I sent a 5th edition of the class about 11 o'clock, so my time. So look for that one. I added a bunch of slides on Rahu through the houses. Okay. So again, stand on the shoulders of many great people who've written about Rahu and Ketu, just a lifelong study. Okay, so let's start our class like we always do, looking at the transits for the week. And I need to get the north-south transits up. Chart up here. Okay, that's Bobby Kennedy Jr., which Laura asked about. Taurus rising, Jupiter in the first. Just real quick thought. I mean, obviously Jupiter going into Taurus next May is certainly going to help. In Vimshotri Keshma Dasha, he's got Moon in the 2nd. is in a Rahu-Mars period. You know, Obama got elected in a Rahu-Mars period, so it can do it. I don't know, but I just you know, just when I did run that for you real quickly, but took a quick look. But let's look at today's transits. I was looking at, this was the eclipse day, but we'll go back there. Today's the 15th. Okay. Okay, this is about now. Okay, so this is a card for Chicago today. And what's interesting is we have
It's
Venus.
July 15th. July 15th.
Oh, that's next week. Okay, I thought that was wrong. Thank you for catching that. I was seeing Venus and Mars separated, and I thought, okay, that was good news. Okay, so yeah, this is the chart that I looked at when I was writing the newsletter this weekend. Yeah, Venus is still Sandhi until tomorrow in the Gandanta. It's past the worst part of the Gandanta, which is 0 to 40 degrees. It's still considered in the Gandanta the first 3 degrees. It's really close to Mars, which either creates great passion and a lot of sexual energy, or it can create a lot of fighting and tensions in relationship. Also note that Rahu is trining it almost exactly. Rahu is at 6 degrees, Mars is at 4, Venus is at 0. Rahu will be trining Mars exactly on Tuesday. And I've written this week's newsletter is about Rahu Mars trines. They call it a walk on the wild side. There are a lot of good things about it. And also because we have Jupiter here, it's a good athletic connection. You've got Rahu, Jupiter, and Mars, you know, in that trinal relationship. It can give Mars a lot of courage and a lot of athletic energy, a lot of, you know, to move forward. In Rahu Mars, there's a dark side to it also. Now, I would say this, you know, we have to evaluate, is the current transit you know, heavily afflicted, or is it light? Now, it is conjunctive benefic. Even Venus and Mars, you know, are kind of a nice combination when they're not fighting. We've got the opposition from Saturn, which is still wide. Again, Saturn opposition this month is July 22nd. So Mars is, I'm ruled by Mars, so I'm feeling it. I'm feeling a little bit of the Saturn. I'm definitely feeling the Rahu giving me kind of a lot of crazy energy to do more than I can handle. You know, Rahu Mars can kind of increase the adrenal energy. It can make you a little bit adventurous too in a crazy way, and you have to watch out for people on the road who are passing too wildly or driving too crazy, or, you know, changing lanes wildly. But I see a lot of that when you have Rahu Mars combinations. But, you know, Jupiter is helping that whole complex, so I don't really think it's a horrible situation. It will get darker as we move to the Mars Saturn opposition. And, you know, Mars and Saturn, Saturn just puts on the brakes and helps Mars not go too fast. So it's not, even Saturn Mars, which I have in my chart, in my natal chart, is not a horrible combination. It just makes one a little bit indecisive and makes one slow the, you know, just one foot's on the gas, one foot's on the brakes. It just makes you a little cautious about moving forward too quickly. And sometimes that's good, because if Rahu Mars is too reckless, then Saturn's kind of helping it tone down a little bit. We also have, this is in the true node, in the mean, I think both in true and mean node now. Ketu is clearly in Chitra Nakshatra. We talked about that last week, and connecting a Ketu Mars connection. And again, you have to kind of watch out for sudden accidents or burns, or you know, if you're, you know, all these things manifest. If you're angry and you're not expressing your anger, then it will manifest as an accident. I know the other day I just hurt my hand taking things out too quickly from the dryer, and had a big scrape. It was nothing big, but, you know, those, if you have unexpressed anger and you're not letting it out, then it can manifest, you know, in something like that. So whenever you have Mars afflicted, just make sure you let out your anger. I always tell people to scream in the empty car or in the empty house, and just or get a lot of exercise, take a walk around the block. Mars Rahu is best handled with a lot of exercise. It just Mars wants to move, and if you're sitting too much and you're thinking about what's not working in your life, you're gonna get kind of frustrated. So even the Mars Saturn opposition is going to be helped by exercise or yoga or Tai Chi, slowing it down and things like that. Mercury has moved into we have nice Sun is in Purnavasu now, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is 11 houses away. Nice combination. I always like Sun in Purnavasu. I'll go over my natal Jupiter in about 4 days. I think it's kind of a powerful transit. But Sun, Sun's definitely Sun Jupiter. This is a Sun Jupiter combination. It's happy. One of the problems that we're going to have now is Mercury in Cancer. I wrote about this yesterday. Well, Mercury and the Moon, Mercury doesn't really like Cancer. Again, second house is a Marika for Gemini. The Moon's friends with everybody, but Mercury does not really like the Moon because Mercury is the intellect, and the Moon, is more emotional. And when we ever have Mercury Moon combinations, sometimes we're justifying our emotions with our intellect. And as I pointed out in all my classes, emotions are just meant to be felt. So if you feel angry or if you feel happy, you tell your spouse, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling sad. You don't go, I'm feeling sad because I'm remembering that my dad passed away last year. And I mean, that's a valid thing, but and we tend to do that. But sometimes for certain, if you're a water sign, emotions are just meant to be felt. Now if you're ruled by Mercury, then maybe you do have to, or if you're an intellectual sign, if you're an air sign, yeah, maybe you really kind of do need to express why you're feeling your emotions. But for water signs, we're just meant to kind of feel. Moon in the first, if you have Moon in the first, also you're just kind of ruled by the Moon on some level. So you just need to kind of feel those emotions and not analyze them. And so the problem with Mercury in Cancer is it's going to be strong, particularly starting tomorrow. It's going to be Pushkara and Virgotama. And so the first 3 degrees of Cancer are a very powerful place. If you studied all those things with me, Pushkara gives it extra kind of strength for success. So Mercury is very strong in the first 3 degrees. It then gets connected with Saturn's nakshatra, and Saturn, can, again, the nakshatras get our mental, right? So we can have a little bit more negative thinking come up. Whenever we have Mercury and Saturn associated, so Mercury will be in Saturn's nakshatra. Now, Pusha is very auspicious for spirituality on the outward level, but still on the inward level, it's going to feel kind of, have some negative thinking could come up here. So you just have to catch yourself if you get gloomy, or, you just, you have to do whatever you do to get, shape your mood. Sometimes maybe you need a Bach flower remedy. Maybe you need, just to do some exercise and some yoga. Maybe make sure you do your sadhana. Now, the dispositor of the Moon, of Mercury, is the Moon, and the Moon changes signs every couple of days. And so depending on what sign the Moon is, now Mercury will be even more kind of up and down, So, Moon in Taurus, and in about 4 or 5 days, 5 or 6 days, will be more supportive for Mercury. But when the Moon's in Scorpio during this transit, it's not as happy. So you always have to remember that, where's the dispositor going? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, you can get more details in the newsletter tomorrow on both the Rahu transit and and you should definitely be reading that stuff because that's while you're taking this class. Okay. Okay, so let's go into today's lesson. So we always remember contextually that transits are 20% influence, but they're triggers. But you know, the transits of the slower moving planets, which we're going to be covering the next few weeks, Rahu, Ketu, Saturn, and Jupiter, you know, they're big influences because they last a long time. So, you know, they're probably more than a 20% influence, particularly if you're in a Rahu Ketu Dasha or a Rahu Ketu Bhukti, then the transits of Rahu and Ketu are going to be very important. If you're ruled by Scorpio or Aquarius, which are co-owned by Rahu and Ketu, then it's also like the transit of the ascendant lord. So you have to pay attention to it. You know, if Rahu and Ketu are going over key natal planets, let's say you have your sun and moon in the first 6 degrees of Aries, which I think Laura probably does, right? You have a lot of planets. You know that, you know about that transit, yeah.
Oh yeah, I can totally feel that transit.
Yeah, it's right, and it's going to get more intense because her moon's at 1 degree, and so by the time we get into September, it's going to be right on top of her. So, you know, there are remedies for that and mantras, and you know, just being aware of it is the start. And you know, if it, you know, Rahu moon is going to bring up subconscious fears and paranoias, and you know, and you just have to kind of, now the bright side of Rahu moon, especially because you have Jupiter there, it can bring up a lot of enthusiasm. So Rahu moon isn't totally negative. It could, you know, it might be an enthusiastic time for you to do marketing or get out there if you want to expand your business. So it's not totally negative, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, I was going through your slides for today and I was feeling pretty good about this transit. You said a lot of positive things about Rahu and Moon
Yeah.
coming together in transit, which I hadn't seen before. So
Yeah, we actually have to remember that there is particularly with Rahu, you know, Rahu can be very positive if it gets a Jupiter aspect. Again, it's friends with Mercury and Venus, and so if you get conjunctions of Rahu with Mercury, Venus, Jupiter in transit or in natal, you know, it actually is going to bring good things. So we shouldn't think that all Rahu transits are horrible. It's like Rahu, Saturn, Rahu, you know, Rahu, Mars, you know, that are the ones, Rahu, Sun even, you know, are the ones that are going to just kind of cause more challenges. But you know, Rahu transits are not all bad. Yeah. But anyway, so look to see where you have a key natal planet. If the Dasha lords, you know, if Rahu is interacting with your Dasha lord, then you know, you also have to pay attention. So let's say that's not the case with me, but let's look at me. I'm not here. Okay. So my Mars is at 19. So earlier in the year, Rahu went over my natal Mars, and you know, I definitely felt it. And because I'm in if I were in a Rahu Mars period or Mars Rahu period, it would be a stronger interaction. You know, because I'm still in a Rahu period, it was a pretty strong interaction. So you always have to look for that. We also have to remember that, you know, Rahu has a 3-year impact because of the second house aspect. I keep, you know, that's not taught enough, but over and over again, it saves me. I was looking at somebody's chart and they've got Rahu in the 12th, and they have a very strong Rahu personality, and it's impacting everybody because they're very self-centered and they talk for an hour and don't ask any questions. And you know, I was just realizing, okay, they have it's like Rahu in the first, you know, Rahu in the 12th is like Rahu in the first. It aspects the 12th. So in transit, you know, the Rahu transits are, you know, I've mentioned this before, are, you know, really 3 years. So even though Rahu's going to leave Aries in October, November, in Pisces it's aspecting Aries, so it doesn't go away, you know. So just, you know, just remember Rahu transits are 3 years. And again, if you're Aquarius or Scorpio rising, For Aquarius, you always, Rahu's often, even Virgo, if, you know, actually I should add Virgo. Sanjay Rath is very big on saying, you know, Virgo is co-ruled by Rahu, and often it's the primary ruler. And we forget that. You know, I get clients all the time with Mercury exalted in Virgo. And even though, because Mercury, you know, with a bunch of other planets, and because Mercury is in Virgo, you're supposed to use Rahu as the co-owner of Virgo, and that gives you the correct root of Lagna. So you have to remember that if you're dealing with Aquarius, Virgo, or Scorpio, that Rahu transits are particularly impacting them. Okay. So kind of general points. Every year and a half, you know, every year for 1.5 years, we get a transit of Rahu and Ketu, and usually Rahu and Ketu will stay in a nakshatra for 6 to 9 months, and you know, because those are long transits, you have to pay attention to the nakshatra transits too. Every 3 years, you know, we have to look at a Rahu transit because of the second house aspect. And we also have to look at the trines. Now, it's something I just was thinking about this morning. You know, Rahu transits in some ways are also like Jupiter transits because Rahu trines, you know, 5 and 9 from itself. And so when you have a Rahu transit, in my case, you know, Leo is being impacted. It's affecting my 10th house of career, suggesting, you know, wanting to achieve more in my business and grow more. And Rahu is aspecting Sag, where I have my natal Rahu, and that's second house. So that's giving more money, cravings, the desire to increase my wealth. And so the trine, you know, it's not only the house that's being impacted, it's you have a long transit of the trines happening. And again, you know, you're going to get in this case, we're getting the fire sign transits of Rahu. So all your fire signs are being impacted. And then when Rahu goes into Pisces, all the water signs are being impacted. And so you have to see how that interacts with your chart. So remember to do that, because the trinal aspects of Rahu are pretty significant. Okay, so this year in the True Node system, Rahu goes into Pisces on November 29th, and in the Me Node system, it goes on October 30th. I tend to look at both. One of the things, you know, and this is the big test. Do we use True Nodes or do we use Me Nodes? Now, again, as I've taught you, because the ancients use Me Nodes, all the Varga charts work better when you do mean charts. So we always do natal chart astrology using Me Nodes. Now, the issue is, are True Nodes more important in transit? And I have mixed feelings. I kind of think they are. And the way to tell is, and I test this every year and then I forget about it, is when the nodes change signs, they have an immediate impact. So suddenly new houses come into play, new things happen in your life, new desires come up. So this year you should watch and see, are your Pisces desires, depending on what house is going on, being triggered October 30th in the Me Node, or are they being triggered on November 29th in the True Node? And again, we're dealing with, you know, Rahu by nature is fuzzy and chaotic and confused, and so whether you'll get a definitive answer, I don't know. But that's why I tend to look at both of them. But you know, what you do notice though with the nodes, and this is the general rule, is that when the nodes move into a new sign in a new house, they have some immediate impact. And I do see this every time that the nodes move. And my memory is even such that I can't remember. I think I finally decided that the True Nodes are very important in transit, and I kind of do pay attention to them. But you know, it's kind of iffy sometimes. Again, Rahu is about ambition, desire for things in that house will bring opportunities and success, but dissatisfaction. So again, particularly when Rahu is connected to Jupiter and Mercury and Venus, you know, he definitely brings good results. He brings material success, and we shouldn't fear Rahu as much as he is feared by the Indian culture. Ketu transits are more problem. They bring rejection, low self-esteem, karmic issues from the past, problems with government, often will cause health problems. Rahu will also, obviously, but definitely Ketu is very important. Now, this is, I don't know if I haven't taught this before. Again, this is new material. This is why I have editions 2.0, because I always come up with new material. Sandhi nodes in transit are very important. So when the nodes are going between 1 degree and 29 degrees, they tend to create very confused mental energies. It's almost like you can peer into an alternate universe. Psychology gets eerie, weird, and distorted. And this year it's particularly weird, and this doesn't always happen, is that the nodes are Sandhi for like 3 months. So September 14th to December 13th in the True Node system. And this is where you can, in the True Node system, the nodes go direct. And this is what's happening. And I'm not going to, I could put this up here, but I don't like switching my True Nodes. But in the True Node system, there are times that the nodes go direct. And so that's why it's taking longer. It's like, it's like Mercury going retrograde. It's like the nodes go direct. It's like they're going in the wrong direction. And that happens in the True Node system, and it tends to kind of make the transit last longer. And so that's what's happening this year. But it's happening in the Gandanta between Pisces and Aries. So, the Gandanta is always kind of a pretty difficult time. So if you're Pisces rising, or like Afi has her moon at 29 degrees, this, might be a time to kind of, there might be some mantras that we need to prescribe for you. Or, I don't, it depends on the dasha that you're running. You're in a Rahu dasha. I don't want to create fear, but it basically, you have to be aware of your mental state as being quite distorted because of the Sandhi nodes, and it's happening over your moon. And so you have to either do lots of meditation and yoga and do things that, just being aware of what's going on, you're not going to have, be impacted as much. But so the rule is that when Rahu is Sandhi, it tends to be more anxious and paranoid. It feels constrained by forces beyond its control. It feels victimized by overpowering forces. Maybe it may have more nightmares or difficult dreams. It may even be a little manic depressive. Those are all things that happen with Rahu when it's kind of afflicted. Again, if you have your sun or moon at 29 to 1 degrees of a water sign, air sign, conjunction in your chart, or if you're Aquarius rising, which is co-ruled by Rahu, or if you're in a Rahu dasha, or if Rahu is your nakshatra lord, it could lead to emptiness, leading toward addictive patterns, frustration, sorrow, dejection, psychological intensity, and mental anguish. So these are all the qualities of an afflicted Rahu, and when Rahu is Sandhi, it tends to kind of bring out those dark energies. So if you're aware of them, you can do Durga mantras to Rahu. There's some chants on YouTube. You can listen to Durga Chalisa, which is 8 minutes. There's a Durga Kavach, which is a protection against Rahu. You just listen to that every day during those 3 months if you have a intense Sandhi period, or if Rahu is impacting your chart. So Ketu Sandhi, I don't know why, but Ketu Sandhi is supposed to have a longer period. It's supposed to be 1 degree 30 minutes to 28 degrees 30 minutes. I'm not sure why or who taught me that. I had it in my notes. And so that Ketu Sandhi is going to be starting probably in mid-September, or 1st of September. So again, if you're ruled by Scorpio, or if you're in a Ketu period, or if you're, Virgo rising or early Libra rising, you're going to feel that quite intensely. It can give you desires to give a material attachment. You can feel disillusioned. You may have difficult knots to unravel, feel unsettled, and have emotional distortions and may tend towards self-isolation. May feel unstuck in regrets of the past. That's what Ketu does. It makes us stuck in regrets of the past. So again, all of this is not to alarm you. It's just, as Jyotishis, if you get clients who are going through this, you explain what's going on. If you're personally going through it and it's impacting you strongly, you do remedies. You say, oh, there goes Ketu again. Ketu, you can go. We know what this is. We don't have to play this game, And whenever things are going on, you have the free will to do something about it. I mean, I know when some transits are really intense. I mean, I have friends who just had a friend who just was so scared of her transit, she wouldn't go out of the house for 3 months. I think that's kind of extreme. I don't think we can live our lives that way, but we can, if Ketu is going to make us self-isolated, then when somebody invites us to a party, we go, we join a group. Even though we don't feel like it, we don't want to do it, we just want to be alone at home and feel stuck about how horrible our life is and what our parents did from the past. Get out there. You don't have to be victimized by any of these planets. They bring up energies for you to heal. You don't have to buy into it totally. You have some free will because you're spiritual beings and you're Jyotishis, okay? Okay, Rahu and Ketu transits. So, like all transits, we watch them from the ascendant and the moon. Vedic astrologers think, usually look at the moon more because that affects the mind and the emotions, and that may have a 60% effect versus 40% for the ascendant. I tend to look at transits from the ascendant more because I'm more interested in the physical world. My clients are interested in money and buying houses and what's going on with their health. So again, you do transits from the ascendant for those physical things, and for the moon for the mental and the emotional level, and both are important. I have moon in the first, so I've never really had to deal with the dual nature of the transits, but many of you do. I don't think anybody else has moon in the first. Rahu, again, it is an evil demon, but it will bring creativity to the house that it transits. I mean, I always remind people that, Rahu is creativity. If you look at great pop stars and songwriters and great artists, they often have Rahu aspect in the ascendant lord or in the first house or conjunct the first house lord. It makes them very creative, and we like creative people. We like innovators. Rahu changes things. Rahu breaks us out of the box. It can bring charismatic energy. You got Rahu going through the first house. If you're looking for a relationship, you might be more attractive to people. You might be, you go to a job interview, you have more charisma, so it's good. Rahu can bring gains and transits even in the 8th house, where unexpected money can come from lotteries or inheritance or stuff like that. So it's not 8th house, transit of Rahu. 8th house is always difficult because it's scandals and accidents and, chronic illnesses and divorces. That's the dark side of it. If you've caught natal malefics in there like Mars or Saturn, or, you've got a particularly difficult, if you're in a Rahu period with a difficult Rahu in your natal chart, but it can bring good things too. Rahu transits are better for material prosperity. For example, 5th house, it may not bring children, but it may bring a new play or a dance performance. Again, 5th house is what? Romance or performance or investment or children, creative expression. Again, children are a creative expression of ourselves. So Rahu will create desire for those things. It's not good for children in the 5th house, but it will create a desire for romance. It may create a foreign partner in your life. It may, push you toward technology investment, which may or not be good, depending on what the market's doing. Rahu will create a smokescreen and confusion around whatever house it transits. Okay, don't forget the nature of Rahu is that it tends to create confusion wherever it goes, and you just can't quite figure out what's going on. And by the time you figure it out, it's gone. Like been kind of struggling with weight gain this, now, and I've got Rahu going through my 6th house, and I just haven't even been clear enough to kind of figure out what the hell's going on. And, it just finally hit me a couple days ago, but it's, it can create confusion around the issues. And 6th house is discipline around health and exercise and problems with coworkers. And, I've had all of those happen with Rahu going through my 6th house. And sometimes you're just not even clear on what the solution is, and you're just not, things are fuzzy, 12th house transit of Rahu may create unconscious overspending or excessive indulgence in drugs and sex. So, it can create, and don't forget, Rahu has that kind of subconscious anxiety to it, and we can't get a handle on it, and we don't know what it is. We just have this eerie feeling in the background. And what do we do usually? Well, we usually stuff some food in our mouth. And if we're, if we're part of the normal world, we head for the, the refrigerator and grab a beer, or, go for some drugs or something, and, or, grab our partner for some wild sex. But, ultimately, when these energies are coming up, they want to be transformed. Ultimately, fear is not real, and Rahu is not real. It's an imaginary point. It's not a planet. So most of what we fear is not real. So we have to kind of get a handle on what we're afraid of, and then we have to transform it with meditation and mantras and yoga and exercise, and not give in to like trying to cover it up. Rahu hitting the ascendant, the midheaven cusp for career or certain house may create key events in that area too. Well, his transit over natal parent may enliven creativity for that planet. So a transit over natal Mercury may lead to a book or an article or a speech. So Rahu, again, it expands like Jupiter. It wants to create. It inspires us with desire to do something bigger. And it's a good thing on many times. It's certain times it isn't, of course. Rahu will increase and magnify the energy of whatever planet it crosses. So just whenever you get Rahu Venus, it's like, now I have to worry about it. We've got Rahu, have Rahu trining Venus this week. I don't even think I wrote that in my calendar. And that can create, sensual indulgence energy. It could be desire for sex. It could be desire for buying things. It can be desire for eating too much cheesecake. So, we have that kind of going on. I think because Venus only gets up to 4 degrees. Let's see. We're never going to get the exact aspect. Let's see. Venus only gets up to 4 degrees this month, and Rahu's at, is moving toward 4. So we'll have a pretty close direct aspect of it, but we'll have a strong influence. But so you have to watch your tendencies for overspending, overeating, indulging in the senses, or buying too many things. At the moment I'm obsessed with going to Europe this Christmas, and it's going on the whole week, and I've been driving my travel agent crazy, and I don't even know if it makes sense, but it's just kind of something that's going on with Rahu, it's obsessive. Rahu returns. Now you can note these key ages: 19, 38, 57, 76, 95. We go through Rahu returns. So Rahu, takes 18 and a half years to give you a Rahu turn. So you get your Rahu return. Usually the first Rahu return is like changing directions in college. Like at age 19, I changed my major 4 times. And I was pretty confused about it, and I kept changing. I didn't know anything about Rahu returns or Rahu, or I just knew I was like pretty unhappy or unsettled every time, with whatever I was studying, and I kept changing majors. So I don't remember what happened at 38. 57, it was a big year for me, but watch those Rahu returns. Rahu trines, so Rahu trines to the Moon, Sun, Venus, Mercury, or natal Rahu will bring luck. Rahu Mars will create wild energy. We just talked about that today. Rahu backing Sun, Mercury, Venus arc will bring good luck. So again, the arc is about 3 degrees usually with Rahu. It can be as much as 5, but again, I usually with Rahu trines, I'm usually looking at conjunctions in the D9 chart as being significant. Ketu transit guidelines. Again, you also look at them from the moon and the ascendant. Ketu going through a house will bring a completion to issues with that house. First house transits may lead to self-introspection and transformation as a result of humiliation. So I didn't have time to write out all the Ketu transits. I may have you do some research and look them up. But they're significant. They're probably more important than Rahu because they tend to be more challenging. Ketu transits bring unusual experiences with regard to the affairs of those houses, could be scattered or brilliant depending on the dasha running and other influence. Ketu, don't forget the nodes tend to scatter energy and create confusion, and so we just can't quite get a handle on what the hell's happening with those houses that it's going through, and that's problematic. Maybe that's what's going on. I've got Ketu going through my 12th house, and a strong desire to travel abroad, which is a 12th house transit, and yet I'm just totally confused. And I think we've changed our mind 4 times in the last week. And the moment we're thinking of going to Spain, but which only because it's warmer. In all the places I want to go, December is my best month to take off because my business is very quiet, and but it's cold, and we've been to the Caribbean at Christmas, and we don't want to go there. We've been to Hawaii, so now we're thinking of going to Spain, which is a little bit warmer than other places. But anyway, I'm in a Rahu period, and Rahu wants to go someplace foreign, and Venus wants luxury. So Venus is the 12th house lord. It wants to go to a foreign country. So and Ketu is confused at the moment, transiting in the 12th house. Okay. Ketu hitting the ascendant or midheaven or cusp may create sudden events there. Again, Rahu and Ketu tend to be kind of sudden. So suddenly things happen when they change signs. Watch October 29th, November 29th. And suddenly when they change signs, new things happen, new desires happen, new things fall away. So nothing to fear. Change is always good, but sometimes you tell people to wait. I originally was going to travel at Thanksgiving, and I looked at the astrology for Thanksgiving, and between the nodal confusion with the Sandhi nodes and Mars conjunct the Sun in transit for me, and Venus in Virgo, I said, the horrible time to travel. Venus is going to be exhausted. Mars is going to be exhausted, conjunct the Sun. We're going to have an exhausting time traveling. We're not going. This doesn't make sense. So I completely rechanged our trip. That was one of the changes this week. So anyway, funnily enough, Ketu going over your natal Jupiter may block optimism and expand. So don't forget, Ketu is like a black hole. It tends to eclipse wherever it goes. So it tends to kind of, whenever you have Ketu transits going on over a natal karaka, either if it's conjunct another planet, it's going to suck that karaka into a black hole. If it's going over a natal planet, it's also kind of destroying that karaka and sucking it into a black hole. So Ketu is more problematic. Ketu returns also happen with the Rahu returns, again, starting a new chapter. So watch those years. Ketu over natal Rahu, that happens every 9 years. It happens at age 28. Usually, you probably don't notice it at age 10, but it would happen at 10 and at 28, and at 18 and at 46. It tends to be the completion of a cycle and the reflection on all that has happened and taking a new path of destiny to do a fresh start. It's said to be fortunate. Ketu over other natal planets, again, may bring past life good luck and fortune. Again, Ketu transits aren't always bad. They just sometimes bring unexpected good fortune. Sometimes they can bring, you know, if it's the wrong dasha and it's like Mars or Saturn or something, you know, then it's kind of a mess. But even Ketu Saturn can bring a lot of spirituality and letting go. Planets going over natal Rahu or Ketu can create new beginnings and confusion. Rahu over natal Venus may increase income or bring a new girlfriend. Again, it creates desire. Rahu manifests things, you know. Ketu over Venus may kind of lead to a breakup of a relationship, you know, or a girlfriend who's suddenly having an emotional breakdown and causing a lot of schisms in your relationship. Again, Rahu transits show what you will experience, and Ketu shows what you will be letting go of. So I think, again, Rahu is always about desire, and for the most part, Rahu will manifest. And Ketu wants you to let go of the past. So the key with Ketu transits is letting go, and the key with Rahu transits is just, you know, being grateful for what manifests. Look at the house, sign, and nakshatra for more information. I have information on the houses. We've done Rahu and Ketu class. We did Rahu through the signs. You know, you just, you know, what Rahu and Aries. Well, what Aries is ego. It's ambition. It's Mars. It's, you know, movement forward. It's, you know, Ashvini at the moment is the same thing. It's the wild horse going out at the racetrack. You know, that's the symbol of Ashvini. Rahu and Ashvini is just accentuating that energy. So there's a lot of energy to move forward now, and that's partly, you know, with Jupiter going still direct until September. You know, this Rahu at the beginning of Aries, you know, can be a very good thing for you if you need to get a lot done. Use the energy to get a lot done, and then know in the fall that you've got to deal with the eerie, crazy Sandhi quality of the nodes. Rahu is usually positive. It will enhance the qualities of the planets it connects with often. And I told you about Rahu Ketu transits show up at the ingress to, you know, always. Rahu and Ketu transits will impact more if their dashas are running. So again, it could be bhukti or major period. So always pay attention to Rahu and Ketu if you're in a Rahu period. And they tend to impact the subconscious because that's what they're about. And you know, we don't have to be totally negative. Like Ketu going through the 7th house may not lead to the loss of a spouse or moving away from her, or, you know, but it may lead to maybe having to work abroad and be separated, you know, from her or something. So, you know, it could be something like that. Eclipses during the 18-month Rahu Ketu transit period will escalate issues for those houses and signs. So eclipses, when we study Rahu and Ketu, and we will look at eclipses later, we always look at the eclipses because they tend to they come in pairs. You know, we usually get 6 eclipses for each sign during a Rahu and Ketu transit, and so they're going to keep bringing up transformation for those issues to happen. Again, reminder of the nodal axes. Again, the 1-7 axes, we went over this a few weeks ago. Health is, you know, first house is going to be health, 7th house is relationship. You know, on the 1-7 axis, you may have a feeling that the world may owe you a living and failure to take responsibility for making things happen. So, you know, there's a problem when you have Rahu in the 1st house in the natal chart. You can be very self-centered. In transit, you know, what I've pointed out in the class is the transits reinforce the natal chart astrology, but sometimes the natal chart astrology helps us understand the transit, and some of those issues will come up to some level. We always get a lot of relationship dissatisfaction when we're going through the nodes, going through the 1-7 axis with Sun, Moon, Mercury, particularly with Sun, Moon, Mercury involved. Now, in my chart, and I think I revealed this last week to you, and I just have to remember this is what's going on. In a sense, Aries Libra is the relationship axis because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac and Libra is the seventh sign of the zodiac. And so when I have Ketu going through also my 12th house and also went through my natal Saturn this year, you know, it's going through Libra, which is the relationship house. I definitely have dissatisfaction with relationship coming up more than I ever have, and I'm actually thinking of seeing a counselor specifically to transform that energy. And I'm taking this relationship class to learn more about relationships. So it's forcing me to work on it so I can deepen my relationships and be better at relationship. But, you know, whether, you know, I'm not thinking divorce and I'm not thinking, you know, that's the answer. And you know, there's nothing that dire happening. But I do, you know, it's forcing me to kind of think of that issue. Again, again, this is, you can also do this by sign. That was how it's happening for me. 12th house, I also think, is a marriage house. As I've told you, it's about sacrifice in marriage, usually for children or for guru or something like that. The 2-8, nodal axis, again, possibilities of accidents, harsh speech, eating disorders, financial worries. The 3-9th axis, mixed blessings with the node. Again, 3rd house is sexual energies, material cravings. 9th house, you know, is going to be higher education, gurus, and spirituality. Again, how they manifest is going to be, you know, related to whether it's Rahu or Ketu. 4-10 axis, lack of peace of mind, frustration with career due to ambition, conflict between, you know, home and work. You know, may detach from mainstream life in the 10th house and create loneliness, problems with illness. The nodes never do well in the 4th house because it's the mind. 5th and 11th house, more success in worldly matters, impatience and carelessness may lead to health issues. The 11th house is also a health house. 6-12 house axis, health enemies, secret enemies, co-worker problems are the types of things that come up. Okay. So Rahu and Ketu transits are better in the 3rd, 6th, and the 11th places from the natal moon or the ascendant. But you have to qualify that, and that's what I've been teaching you. Well, if you've got Saturn in the 3rd, 6th, or the 11th house, and you've got Rahu or Ketu going over your natal Saturn, you know, it's going to block that better transit energy from happening. So see what's all, and that could also be in transit. If you're having a 3rd house, you know, let's say you're Aquarius rising, you've got the Mars, you've got the good 3rd house transit of Rahu through Aries, however good it can be for Aquarius rising, but you've got Jupiter in there, which is helping out. When we had Mars in there about 4 or 5 months ago, you know, it was hurting the benefits of that 3rd house transit. So see what's manifesting in transit that may be blocking, and what's there in the natal chart that may be blocking also. Again, this is just a quick summary of the houses. We'll look at, but for case studies today, we'll look at all your charts. So we'll make this more concrete. I may stop here and do that for a little bit. Rahu transiting over natal planets creates a feeling of expansion, particularly with natural benefics like Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus. For malefics, it's going to create more problems with Mars or Saturn, particularly if you're in the wrong dasha. Avoid living on the edge and taking too many risks. So again, if you have the nodes hitting your natal Mars or your natal Saturn, you just, you know, you might, you know, you don't want to trigger the malefic aspect of Mars, which can be accidents, or the malefic aspect of Saturn, which could be health issues. So just, you know, go easy, don't take too many risks. Ketu transits, you know, they want to reject, renounce, and give up and throw a wrench into unrealistic expectations of what you want in your life. and highlights the vulnerability of your weaknesses and what your soul needs to work on. So Ketu, Ketu is very subtle. If you remember the Rahu and Ketu class, it's very kind of it does bring deep healing for us. We usually have to reject the past and move to the Rahu pole to make Rahu work. But Ketu transits are difficult because rejection of a relationship that could happen, renouncing a job, or throwing suddenly, you're so sure something's going to happen and it doesn't happen and you're thrown for a loop. This is what Ketu does. Rahu, going over natal Rahu. This is like a Saturn return in the sense that it's a new cycle, and this happens every 18 and a half years. I do see it a lot in people's charts, and they're coming to me. They're thinking of doing something new with their life, changing jobs, moving, starting a new relationship, or something like that. So Rahu going over natal Rahu is like a Saturn return. Saturn returns beckon us to start a new career, we're tired of the old one. Rahu returns are telling us the last 18 years are over. Let's do things differently. Let's move to a new part of the country. Let's change jobs. Let's transform our relationship or move on. So Rahu transits over natal Rahu can do that. Again, you always have to there's always a lot of confusion when it's happening because it's Rahu, so you have to get clarity. Rahu over natal Ketu is again a half a cycle. It's telling you, but you're still kind of in the middle of this karmic transformation of the last 9 years, but you better work on getting the answers. Ketu over natal Rahu creates confusion and desire to give up your desires and ambitions. Again, so think of it. Rahu is about desire and wants to get a raise and wants to get a promotion and wants to make tons of money. And Ketu goes over your natal Rahu. It's like it throws a wet blanket over. It says, you don't really want that. You want God. So it's a good thing if you turn to spirituality when you have Ketu going over your natal Rahu. But it can. If you're very material and you're in a Rahu period and you want more money and you want more all the Rahu things, that Rahu wants, it may temporarily throw a wrench. Ketu over natal Ketu is again another return like the Rahu cycle. Obviously, those happen at the same time. It's completing the emotional baggage of the past and moving on. So the issue you need to leave behind is connected to the natal Ketu dispositor. So if you have Ketu, let's look at that in life. I can't read. I have Ketu in Gemini, and I had my Ketu return in about 2011, I think, which is a very kind of pivotal year for me. It was kind of it was a year of I was having trouble with the mortgage crisis, and I let go of my house because the mortgage rate went up 30% and the value of the house had dropped 50%, and it was just a horrendous situation. Ketu kind of Ketu is Gemini. The dispositor for Ketu is Gemini. Gemini owns the 8th and the 11th houses. So it was also a big transformation time when I was trying to move away from working with gamblers in my financial astrology business, and that revenue had been dropping, and wanting to help people on a spiritual level. And it was a good transit. I mean, I wouldn't be here teaching you today if I hadn't gone through this big transit, but it did require letting go and transformation, and it was very painful at the time. Usually with Rahu and Ketu degrees, 3 degrees is usually significant in transit, maybe even up to 5 degrees. For those of you who studied the Ruta Lagna with me, Rahu and Ketu going over the Ruta Lagna in transit can be very important. Again, a Ruta Lagna is how people see you, and it's more of the manifest world. We really need to do a whole class on Rutas, but we did 8 weeks before. But it's very important for really kind of predicting material things in life. And Rahu going over your Ruta Lagna may may create somebody who sees you as a crook. And Ketu going over your root logna may make you unseen. You want a promotion, but you know, you keep getting passed over because Ketu is going over your root logna. So, you know, it's kind of it impacts being seen and unseen. It's very significant. Okay. So these are the new slides that I added to the 5th edition. This is more cookbook stuff. Let's work on your chart so that you know you can go here, but definitely read through this. There's always something to learn with Rahu and Ketu transits. I did the Rahu transits for you. So Rahu going through the first house, if it's positive transits, you've got natal Jupiter, Venus, or Mercury there in the first house, or they're going through there in transit, like for Aries rising now, Jupiter's there the whole time. You know, it can empower individuality, charisma, self-expression, and power. So Rahu can do that for you. Maybe you've been suffering, you know, from you need that. So there can be, Rahu can give you a shot in the arm to get out there, you know, and sometimes you need to. On the negative side, you know, you have to watch over talking, being blinded by your ego. Your body may go through massive detoxification. Rahu governs toxins going through your first house. So you have to kind of, you know, if you have natal Saturn there, or if you have natal Mars there or something like that, you know, the Rahu going through the first house could be more difficult. So the way this section work is, you know, like there's always a positive side, which is if Rahu is in a positive sign, ruled by Jupiter, Mercury, or Venus. If Rahu is conjunct Mercury going over a natal Mercury, Jupiter, or Venus, or there's support from a long transiting Mercury, Venus, or Mercury, or Jupiter. So those are the positive sides of the transit. The negative sides, you know, substitute Saturn and Mars, and sometimes maybe the moon sometimes, or the sun for sure. And you can get the darker part of Rahu transits happening. You have your sun in the first house. There's two things that'll happen with Rahu going over your natal sun. You either get such an inflated ego that people can't stand to be around you because you're so full of it and you don't see it, and I'm so great. We hate people like that. You know, we've got Donald Trump with that in his natal chart. You know, if it happens in transit, you know, people may kind of run away from you, and if you don't see what's going on, it's a problem. The other side of it, if it gets really close, it can be eclipse. Sudden loss of power, suddenly getting fired from a job, suddenly, you know, having this political fall because, you know, you thought you're great, and Rahu comes and says, you got too much political ego. We're taking you out. Bye. You know, so, you know, there are, you know, we can't get the bright side with Rahu transits or the dark side with Rahu transits. You know, they're both ultimately good because we need to learn the lessons of them, but we have to be aware of them. So you can go through these, but let's look at your chart so we're not just giving you points. Any questions so far? We'll go through all your charts.
Hey, Barry, I had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I've heard that Ketu is like a saintly planet. So how does that, I mean, you know, I'm seeing all the different things that Ketu's going, you know, that can, a Ketu transit and a Ketu placement can also put one through. Because I just finished up a Ketu, you know, Mahadasha, and it was pretty rough. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, is all of that just so that Ketu can become more spiritual? Is that why they call it the
Right.
same?
Ketu takes away the material to you know, it's the moksha karaka. It wants you to find God. And if you don't turn to spirituality and meditation and during your Ketu periods or major Ketu transits, then you suffer a lot more because, you know, if you're just into more money and more status at work and more sex and, you know, and the perfect relationship and all those things, and Ketu takes all those things away from you, which it does sometimes, then you're left with like, oh, there must be more to life. I better take up meditation. I'm a mess, you know? So
Yeah.
Ketu teaches us to find God and turn to spirituality. And if you're advising clients, going through Ketu and they haven't found meditation, it's good. Ketu governs Jyotish and Vedic astrology also. So a lot of people turn to Vedic astrology to find out why they're suffering in a Ketu period. Maybe that happened to you. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's because I was in between. I was going through a period of finding a different spiritual teacher or spiritual community. So it's almost like I quote unquote took a break, like,
Right.
Yeah, and then that's when everything, all that crap happened. So, I somehow a new teacher was introduced to me, and it's kind of mellowed out. But yeah, that makes sense because I mean, I thought I've always been a spiritual person, and but then, like I said, it was a time when I was going through a time of transition and finding a different teacher. I didn't really
Yes.
do
So what year did that happen? Was that?
like I think it started in 2015, and it just finished up.
Yeah, 2016. I have March 2016. Okay, and it just finished up.
Yeah, so it's like 2018. I think I lost my job of 5 or 6 years where I thought I was going to retire, and but
So
it
let's
was
see.
yeah,
This
it was.
results were good. So Ketu would have been going through Pisces, maybe in 2016. Let's see. Let's go backwards. 23. No, it would have been. It might have been Pisces. So when you had spiritual things happening going on, maybe Ketu was going through your ninth house when you had this big spiritual transition.
Yeah.
And then it went through your eighth house, which always causes kind of fun things. We also have to look at it from the moon, especially because you're ruled by the moon.
Mm.
So look at it both ways. Did you ever look at it before?
I not in this perspective, because I mean I've looked at my chart, but I never saw it in transit because that's why I'm taking the class, because just trying to absorb the basics of Vedic astrology. But now that I'm going through transits, I'm trying to understand what happened in the past, especially with the Rahu Ketu stuff, especially with
Yeah,
Ketu.
Rahu Ketu is like extremely important in your chart because obviously you have them on the 1-7 axis. You have Rahu close to your ascendant, and you have Ketu conjunct Saturn in the 7th. So Ketu Saturn is a very difficult signature for relationship, but our relationship would be with the divine. That's the ultimate relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Ketu Saturn teaches that, but it's tricky. And you were born about 4 or 5 months before the Cuban Missile Crisis too. That I know I have another friend who was born 4 months later, and they ended up with they also had the Ketu Saturn in the 7th, and they ended up being a very devoted partner to somebody who was kind of a Rahu character. and
Well,
and so they, in some ways they learned to kind of be devotional to their partner and serve their partner because their partner's helping so many people. And because they were able to do that, they were able to like move through the what about me energy. But there's a lot of deep, obviously there's a lot of deep lessons to learn. And you might sometime, if you have time, pick up my Rahu Ketu class because it's 20 lessons on Rahu Ketu. And, like you said, we can talk about the nodes forever, but they're very important.
okay.
Okay. So anyway, in transit now, you've got your Mars is conjunct my Mars. That's interesting. Ketu, so I mean, Rahu's going out of your 10th house into your 9th house. And 10th house transits of Rahu can create ups and downs that, in career and status and stuff like that. Jupiter's in transit here is supporting, Mars and the Rahu transit. So I think it's good. When it goes into your 9th house again, are you going to question your spiritual community again? Usually when Rahu transits the 9th house, it starts questioning the guru or the spiritual community. So that could come up again. So just be
I'm not
prepared.
surprised. I'm already starting to think that way.
Okay, interesting. Well, yeah, because it's getting closer, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I have been thinking about the last few few months, so actually a couple of months. So
So
yeah,
yeah, it's probably going to happen. It's probably something's going to, you'd expect that it would happen again. Okay, thank you for sharing, Alice.
thank
Who
you.
else? Laura's here, so let's do Laura. I just talked to you about you before, Laura. So you've got the same, oh, you've got Ketu going over your natal Saturn also. Okay. And we didn't talk
Yeah,
about that.
coming right up.
Yeah, it's coming right up. It doesn't, that one can be very beautiful in the 12th house of moksha and stuff like that, because it really is about letting go and finding God more, So, I mean, K2 Saturn aspects work if we move more toward, God and spirituality. So use this time to go deeper into your spirituality. And it'll be a very fulfilling transit, Um, and there are mantras that we could do for it too, but the Rahu thing we talked about a little bit. I mean, I think it's it can be good because your natal Jupiter's there in transit. It could spearhead career development if you wanted to, because you're a health practitioner. Just let go of the fear and paranoia with the moon there and Rahu moving toward the moon.
Did you say that it was K2 that was causing accidents or little bumps and scrapes for you?
That's Mars K2. I started, yeah, I've always noticed that with Mars K2, but Mars is in K2's nakshatra now. So I notice if Mars is afflicted in transits, I mean, both of those have pretty strong Mars. I have a very strong Mars in Aries. So I luckily am protected against, accident, luckily protected against, major things. But I get, I bump my head a lot sometimes, and I have, that's kind of Mars in Aries. Or sometimes I'll have, I've noticed when Mars is weak that I will have a lot of cuts and scrapes. And, the worst thing that happened was, one time I spilled scalding water on my foot, but, and it was,
Yeah,
it was,
that's happened to me. I've had a lot of scrapes on my hands in the last week, and
yeah,
really hard ones.
yeah, I know they're weird. I think that's just Mars with Sandhi,
Hmm.
in the early degrees of Magha Nakshatra. And it is connected to Ketu there. Um, you just have to, K2 is always a little headless, so we just have to be very focused. I mean, with the nodes, you have to kind of remember that they create like excessive thinking and subconscious fears, and if you're just not focused on what you're doing, something happens. If you're thinking about what happened with your boyfriend or what happened at work and you're doing something, you're going to get a cut, you're just not focused. You have to be 100% in the moment with what you're doing, which is hard, but that's what you have to do. That's what Mars requires.
Right. Thank.
Okay. Um, okay. Now hopefully I'll find all of you here. Let's see. Who came up last time? This is a chart of, so Alice we did, Laura we did. I'll do your, if I don't find you, I'll just pull it up. I just wanted to. Funny. Okay, I'll just pull you guys up. Okay, so let me look at the attendance and just see. Let's do Deanna or Kathy. I did Alice. Kathy always goes first, so I have to make sure that I don't always make you first. I won't forget you. Kathy, where are you? Am I just spelling your name? No. You're here. Okay, here's Kathy's chart. I won't forget you, Natalia. Will you do you next? I think I have your chart. So Kathy, you got your natal Ketu. So you've had your Rahu, you've had your half-year return this year. So it's again, you've got another 9 years of your Rahu return to get Rahu back into Libra. You've got a 9th house transit of Rahu going through the 9th house. So they could be reevaluating your spiritual energies. I don't know if any of that's going on. It could be create desires to travel to foreign countries, or could create desires to do new studies and, you know, to start a new career. Any of that happening? Maybe not.
Well, I did have one unexpected thing happened last year when that transit was still going on. My 3rd and 9th house, and a good close friend that I had lost track of about, how many would that be? 30 some years ago. It was like it timed it. It looked like it was a Rahu Ketu thing, and I was wondering what the half transit would bring, and I had heard that it could bring a completion of some sort. And anyway, this really close friend, we lost track of each other, and which was almost 40 years ago, suddenly popped up into
Okay.
my life again.
Nice.
So it was sort of a completion, because I'd always wondered, you know, what had happened and how this person's life had gone. So it was kind of nice to catch up after 40 years. So and it was we met sort of in the context of a spiritual community, which I think would sort of fit with that 3rd and 9th house thing.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Okay, let me do Natalia before, because she's Natalia, you might want to email me so I get you on the panelist list. I don't know why. Maybe you had trouble with the.
You do have my horoscope, because I've seen
Yeah, I
my.
do have it. Yeah, it's here, right? Aries rising.
Yes.
Okay, so you have Rahu going through the 1st, and Ketu going through the 7th, and it's on the Aries Libra axis. So you have a double relationship thing going on. So, and your ascendant's at the end of the sign, so Rahu's not on top of you anymore, but it certainly can bring health issues, Vata-related issues in Ayurveda, which, you know, too much, you know, craziness in the head and nervousness and things like, you know, anxiety and things like that. Or it could create some unknown health issue that's tricky to find, because Jupiter is also transiting through Aries. It's mitigating any negative effects of Rahu. Ketu in the 7th could create, you know, a relationship breakup or separation from a partner. Any of those things happening?
Yes, definitely. For last couple years, especially last year, I did have a lot of health problems, and kind of just coming back. And as for relationship, it just seems like, you know, I'm losing and losing, and, you know, due to death, you know, of my friends or moving, and I'm just going through that cycle. But actually, the question I wanted to ask you, Rahu is my yogi planet, and I wonder what effect it would have.
Okay. Good question. Let's verify that. Yeah, Rahu's your yogi planet. We have to look at your yogi point also, which is not on this.
Gemini.
Where is it? In the 9th?
I believe it's Gemini. I have to, you know, let me
Oh, it's in
look.
Gemini. It's here. Yeah, YP, yogi point, 19 Gemini. So So sometimes, you know, if Rahu's the yogi planet, then Jupiter connections to Rahu, depending if the dasha is right, could bring unexpected monies, possibly.
Unexpected, I'm sorry.
So if if Rahu is the yogi planet,
Mhm.
then if benefics are transiting or aspecting it, particularly if there's a good dasha going on that's beneficial for you, then it could bring unexpected money. So like Venus went over your natal Rahu last week. And again, these are small things. You have to have a larger thing going on. And you will have Mercury going over Rahu, your natal Rahu. So that those could. No, it's in your fourth house. So do you have luck with real estate at all?
Yes, somewhat, yes, I would say so. I always had place to live, which was, good one.
Okay. And again, you can see you've got Moon, Lord of the fourth and the fourth. Rahu's the yogi point, the yogi planet, and the A2 here is for gain. So all those things are supportive. So it could be certain transits could trigger more luck around fourth house property matters, and also fourth house is vehicles. So it could it could bring support for buying a new car or having good luck with your car or something like that. That's one way you could look at it.
I'm in Sun Dasha right now, and honestly, it wasn't so good as I expected, because it's fifth lord in the ninth house, and I don't have the problem with combustion like my other planets.
Okay, so we have to understand what's going on here. Now you do have a stellium or Sagittarius, so almost we have to read the chart as a Sagittarius rising. It still is the ninth lord in the first. So it's in Mula Nakshatra.
Yes.
The problem is it's in the Navamsha chart, it's in Pada 4. I'm sorry, it's in Pada 3. I'm sorry, that's not the problem. It's Pada 3, isn't it? Such,
I
Pada
didn't look deep in my nakshatra because I cannot be completely sure about my exact date, time of birth.
Yeah,
So
but the sun takes a whole day to move anywhere.
but
So we know the
Venus
sun.
in
We know
Mula
the
too.
sun.
So, going to Sun from Venus didn't change nakshatra. And,
Right. Nothing. The only thing that's going to shift with your birth time might be your moon. But the Navamsha might shift with your moon if we're really off a lot. But the sun isn't definitely in Mula Nakshatra. So there's a Ketu impact in your sun dasha, and Ketu is in the 10th. Again, whenever we're evaluating a dasha, we have to look at many things, and it's not like there are a lot of good things for the sun period. It is afflicted by Lord of the 8th, and Venus is Lord of the 7th and the 2nd. So, and Mercury is also Lord of the 3rd and the 6th. So, actually, even though your sun is a really good planet, it's the 5th Lord and the 9th, it's got kind of 3 afflictions to it. So that's, and it's also very connected to Ketu. All these planets are connected to Ketu, and Ketu is Ketu. It brings Ketu's in Mars' nakshatra. So Ketu is bringing, Ketu increases spirituality and increase study of Jyotish. So and the sun is a very spiritual planet. So somehow we have to sometimes look for spiritual gains in certain dashas, and you should be looking for spiritual gains in your sun period.
The quick question is, I don't quite understand how to really evaluate Mars, because it's my ascendant lord, but it's also lord of the 8th house.
Yeah, it's usually a good planet. It is a good planet. When with Aries, because Mars owns the 8th, we have to be always kind of involved in transformation. And eighth house is also kind of meditation. So it's not bringing it's not hurting the chart. It's not hurting the ninth house. But it's Lord of the eighth and the ninth. It might have a when we have Lord of the eighth and the ninth, it kind of sometimes it can confuse spiritual energies with occult energies a little bit. It can bring a little bit of that. I kind of think the problem with the sun period is Ketu. Anybody else seeing anything that I'm missing? Who took my dasha classes?
So I don't know if I would read that as an Aries. If you read it with the stellium as a Sagittarius, then she's not in the sun dasha period because moon is in the eighth house. So we have to look at that different dasha. If you're reading it from, Aries, and you're saying, okay, she's in the sun, I guess she's in sun Ketu right now. Then, sun being in a Ketu nakshatra, she asked about Mars. Mars is combust. So if you're saying that Aries is her ascendant, then you're kind of talking about, the Mars's indication being combust.
Right. Just
For
one quick clarification here, though. I haven't been taught to use these alternate dashas from an alternate ascendant.
Right. Okay.
So we have to go with the Aries ascendant, and we can use regular Vimshotri dasha. We do have to remember that whenever we're evaluating something, that we have to look at the moon chart, which the moon is particularly strong because it's in Cancer, and she's a female. And we have to, we can't, by looking at the dasha chart, also the dasha lord chart, we are looking at it from Sag. And it is important to evaluate the whole dasha period from the dasha chart. And that it puts moon in the eighth, and it makes it kind of, with Rahu, it makes it a more difficult emotional period. So remember, whenever we're evaluating the dasha, rotate the chart around the dasha lord, and where the dasha, where the sun is located in this case. And so that, that does give us a perspective. We have problems with money with Ketu and sun in the second. We have emotional problems because moon and Rahu are in the eighth, and this is a time to kind of transform emotions. Again, the sun is kind of, the sun isn't afflicted, but Ketu does kind of, Mula Nakshatra is always about taking stuff away to remind us to God. So the key to this period is turning more to your spirituality, because sun is a spiritual planet. Sag is a spiritual sign. Ketu wants to bring you more to God. So moving more to spirituality is what you've chosen in this part of your life. Does that make sense?
And astrology.
Yeah, astrology is too. Yeah, astrology and spirituality. Astrology and spirituality do go together. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I became all suddenly so drawn to astrology. I cannot help myself.
Yeah, Ketu will do that.
But it's I have actually 3 planets in Mula, but they're in 9th house, so it means like every destruction is followed by,
good luck and stuff.
Good luck in a way.
Yeah, but see, the thing is with Mula Nakshatra, it tries to sometimes take away the material to move you to God and spirituality. So as long as that's happening, if you're frustrated in relationships and money and career and stuff like that, and hopefully again, we'd have to look at all the Varga charts to see what's going on. Then it's just a reminder you've chosen this time to develop your spirituality. Okay.
Yeah, couldn't be better time. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Afi, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to point out that the point that you made is good, because it reminds us that we have to evaluate the chart from Sag because she's in a sun period. And that was a good reminder for me that whenever we're evaluating dashas, we always have to rotate the chart around the dasha lord. We have to look at the nakshatra that the period is in, and then we have to look at how the planets are lining up around the dasha, the rashi, the dasha that's involved, which is Sagittarius. Okay. Thank you. That was very useful. You know, my mind, but I didn't. And thank you for reminding me about that. Okay, we're good. So let's do Affy since you're next. Affy, you're okay with the way that I organize that, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, so you've had your Rahu return recently. Did you feel like it completed an 18-year cycle for you and was moving you to something more, or no? I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that happened with my Rahu return previous to this one was that I had a huge change and shift in career, and that happened in 2003, right? And then when this one happened, I was looking for big change as well, and it really didn't happen that way. I just got a promotion at work,
Okay.
and it was a long-waited promotion. I mean, we're talking about 7-8 years of delay for
Wow.
that. So you know, that's what happened with the Rahu return. With me, I've noticed the half returns are difficult.
Okay.
Extremely difficult. And the last time the half return occurred, just like one bad thing after another caused a lot of issues at work. So I don't know if it was directly related, you know, dasha related or whatever, because I was running at the time a Mars dasha, which is supposed to be good
really,
planet for me, but it wasn't. It was very difficult.
Third of the 12th. It's no, that's Mars is a mixed planet for Sag.
Right.
Third of the 12th. Just that people misunderstand that all the time.
So I'm hoping, you know, I will get some good news pretty soon.
We'll all pray for you. Let's all pray for Affy to get her promotion. We should do that. Deanna will come to you in a minute too. And Christina, I don't want to miss anybody. Fifth house transit of Rahu.
I haven't really noticed anything with that.
Okay.
Fifth house, although, you know, I think the last promotion I got was when it was going to the fifth house, kind of. It was on the cusp. And my D10, you see that Mercury Rahu is in Rahu return in my D10. I don't know if you see it that way, but
yeah, I do see that. Yeah.
I did see it that way. And plus I'm running a Rahu, I'm in a Rahu dasha. So I think that's why it was triggered.
Well, the good news is Jupiter is with Rahu in transit, so that's helping the whole situation. So let's hope. And I think it's all about intention. You know, just pray and have the intention that it's going to happen, and let it go, and then whatever leave it to God to create it. Okay, let's move on to Deanna, and then let's do Christina first, because actually she's not here very much. I kept for years I've been saying Christina's been sleeping in Singapore during class. So I had, now that she's here, we have to talk about her.
Thank you.
Okay, so also another Aries rising. You may have to mute yourself a little bit. You need to answer questions. So you also had Rahu going to Alice. Good time for charismatic, and Jupiter's there also.
The echo's really strong.
So Christina, how can we deal with the echo?
Should I plug, wait, let me put on the headset, see whether that helps. I have
Yeah,
my
that,
speaker on, so maybe I
okay,
can
that's
try
the
to.
problem.
Yeah, give me a sec, yeah. What about now? Is it better?
Yeah, that's better. Okay, so the good thing about your Rahu transit is you've got Jupiter there. That combination could, bring more attention to you, could bring you more clients, create more charismatic energy when you're working with people, bring more attention, to you and make you shine a little bit. So I think it's a good transit for you. Have you felt that at all? Or has it
Uh,
been?
Actually, for me, because it's on my first house, so physically, the last year and a half or something, I gained a lot of weight.
Okay.
Before, I have always linked it with, I'm in my 50s, so due to the menopause, hormonal, all the stuff. But now I'm linking to the Rahu transit. I'm thinking could be because the Rahu is in my first house. So it's kind of, and also the Jupiter.
Yeah, it's Jupiter in the first
So
house that's creating weight, but I've got the same thing. Jupiter and Rahu together create, cravings and expansion. Whenever you have Jupiter going through the first house, you gain weight. You just can. Now, the remedy for,
yeah.
do you have like food cravings that you're dealing with?
Actually, I'm quite disciplined. So food-wise,
Oh,
I'm
good.
eating quite healthy. But the
You're
thing
still
is,
gaining weight anyway.
yeah, I'm still gaining it. That's the thing I couldn't figure out the reason.
Well,
Right.
the nice thing about Jupiter, if it's not too excessive, I've gained 20 pounds, it's excessive. If it's not too excessive, it makes you jollier and happier and you can just enjoy it, gives you more guru energy. And it'll be over, when Jupiter goes into Taurus.
Yeah.
So, the only thing you can do just, you probably, a lot about diet because you consult people, but and the Ketu aspect, the Ketu through the seventh house, is, and it's getting close to your natal Mercury. It's 2 degrees from your natal Mercury. Is it creating some dissatisfaction with the relationship or needing to transform relationship?
In the relationship, in the marriage, yes, I have noticed that. Yeah.
So, when these things come up, you can either say, okay, it'll be over in November, and then I'll move on, or you can go to a counselor and be able to talk and work on deepening your relationship by, or if, since you're a counselor yourself, you can just, boldly say, honey, we need to talk. And, you just need to listen for a little bit, so.
Yeah.
But those are good options,
I
but just not, K2 might make us shy about doing that. I'm feeling shy myself. And if we don't speak it out, we're in trouble. Saturn in the second house can create some hesitancy in speaking it out. So I think you just need to kind of speak it out a little bit. You could write it out and express it in writing first, and then you could work on it, and then you could maybe, do it live if you feel comfortable.
Okay. Is there any remedy for the first house, like the weight gaining? Is there any remedy I can do for that?
Well, I have a remedy. I have a Bach flower remedy for food cravings, but you're saying you're not having food cravings. I'm not disciplined.
Yeah.
I have Rahu in the second, so I'm having a problem. But Saturn in the second could also create some lack around food. I mean, there are all kinds. I mean, there are all kinds of remedies for gaining weight. I think it's a matter of finding a diet that works for you, or being more disciplined, or just getting more education on cutting down on your carbs and eating more protein. I mean, there's so many things. There's so many practical remedies. I don't know any Vedic remedy. Usually we don't have remedies for Jupiter because it's usually considered good. And it can be bad for certain rising signs like Libra. My wife is seriously overweight. She's got Jupiter in Libra. It's a functional malefic. In Aries, it's, you know, it's a good friend, so it's bringing a lot good luck and good fortune. Maybe it's even an attitude change, saying, you know, like, it's making me jollier, it's giving me more guru energy, let me enjoy it. You know?
Yeah, I'm wondering once the Jupiter moves into Taurus, away from my first house, I'll be doing the same thing, like eating the same thing. But I'm just trying to project a little bit to the future. Maybe my weight will go down because Jupiter transits out of my first house, even though I'll be doing the same thing.
You know,
Could that
is there
happen?
any thyroid issue possibly with Ketu going over your natal Venus this year?
Ah, I
Did,
haven't checked that actually.
yeah, Venus is thyroid, and have you had it measured for overactive, underactive? Very common, and there's
Okay.
very good thyroid supplements, you know, that are natural that can help that. But you know, have your doctor measure it. It could be hormonal.
Okay, I haven't. I could have that checked. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
something.
And I'm sure Laura has some ideas too, but we'll talk to her later. Okay, Deanna, last but not least. You're definitely not least. But, even with Ketu going through Libra, you're not least, but you are least. I guess you're last.
All good.
Yeah.
Love that K2 influence.
Yeah,
Although the headless feeling at times is a bit much or less.
yeah. Well, you've just gone through it over your ascendant within 3 degrees, so it's almost the worst is probably over. You know, it's a good
Yeah.
time for meditation. You know, you can enjoy K2. I mean, you know, when you're so spiritual, you probably are not noticing it too much.
Yeah, I would say it's been pretty good actually in many ways. And I was reflecting on what key event going over my ascendant created. And I opened an office for my healing practice in the last couple months. And my dear friend Laura was instrumental in that as well. But yeah, that's been just since April. And that's been a long time coming in some ways. So I think that's a significant event, certainly, of Ketu coming over my ascendant.
You notice how in the Dashamsha chart, Jupiter is in Aries, so it overlaps the 4th house in the Dashamsha for your office. So
Oh
Jupiter,
yeah,
isn't that nice?
cool.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
very
like
nice.
that.
But
Yeah.
relationship stuff, has it been craving for more, or has it been just difficult ones that you are just letting go, or you go?
You know, we're actually doing pretty well. I would say that for him, being my chart is going to represent activities in his life, there's been quite a bit going on around his career and developments and challenges and the need for a promotion or raise and you know, I would say, yeah, with it being Aries and let me see, what am I
You have
thinking?
Jupiter going through there, so that's supporting the relationship. Jupiter transiting the 7th is supporting the relationship, and then and in the Navamsha chart, let's see what's Navamsha is going through the Jupiter's going through the 5th here, so yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. It's
Yeah.
good. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
and then we have to look at the dasha, of course, too. And the dasha is Mercury, which is 9th Mercury, and Mercury's in the 5th house in the Navamsha chart.
Do we use a different dasha since her moon is in the 8th?
Yes, we should be using Adna dasha. Thank you for.
Which one? Adna?
Ashtotiri.
We haven't done that course. We haven't done that course yet. I keep threatening to teach it. I haven't. But when you have
Which
moon
one?
in eighth, we're supposed to use a different dasha. Vimshotra will work on some level, but for health particularly. We have to use Adna dasha, which is going to put you in a Saturn Mahadasha. Surprise!
Can't seem to get away from it.
So, but it's the Yogacaraka planet, 4th and 5th house. So
Right.
you're in Saturn Mars. Starting in July, you're finishing up Saturn Moon, which could be a little, emotionally tricky. But that Saturn Mars, and you've got that. We're going to have that in transit exactly when he started. So that's interesting.
And I have a Parivartana yoga between my natal Mars and Saturn, between the 2nd and 5th house.
Nice. So, yeah, and Saturn's a good planet for you, and Mars is, Mars is relationship. So it's, Mars is not a problem until Mars is not a real problem for. And since Jupiter's nakshatra, Mars is not a real problem until you get into Marika time periods and you're meant to leave. Mars is the Marika planet, but it's not. It could bring up health issues because it's a Marika planet. But you're a health practitioner, so you know how to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I did note, I was just reflecting on it here, with Ketu in my 1st house this past year, I did get COVID twice. And interesting, I caught it, so to speak, both times when I was meeting up with my partner's family. And so for a reunion, I went and saw Dan's mom, and she got it, and then I got it. And then last summer, the family came out for his dad's memorial, which was postponed for 2 years because of COVID, and then half the people arrived with COVID. And then I caught it. And I thought that was interesting because my natal Ketu moon is in my 8th house, and that's a house of in-laws, right?
Oh, interesting, yeah. Oh, fun.
So that
okay.
Yeah, so
Ketu's viruses too, so.
But yeah, I do feel that coming to the completion of that Ketu through my 1st house, I've been getting into some very good spaces with my own health remedies and yoga, doing yoga regularly, and the meditation piece is quite strong.
Oh, very nice. Okay. Thank you for sharing and catching up. Okay, let's move to eclipses. We just have about 10 minutes. We can go a few minutes over, but I don't. Sometimes what happens at the end of class, the brain goes dead. How are you guys holding up? I'm in this relationship class, and after about an hour and a half, my brain's kind of wobbly. Sorry about these 2-hour classes. There's always so much. Eclipses. Okay. Eclipses can create inner reflection and allow us to see our unconscious patterns. Hence, insights into meditation may reveal deep knowledge. It's good to meditate during an eclipse. Lunar eclipses happen at a full or a new moon, and solar eclipses at a new moon. I'm sorry, that's true actually. Lunar and solar eclipses are 2 weeks apart. We're going to have 4 to 6 eclipses a year. If we have 6 a year, some of them are minor. At best, eclipses can create opportunities for us to see the illusion of our life, often represented by Rahu, and this may particularly be true if you're in a Rahu period. In a Rahu period, an eclipse can be, if you meditate during the eclipse, you don't ever pay attention to what your thoughts are during an eclipse, but afterwards, when the eclipse is over, if you have some aha experience, and it happened to me once, it can be very revealing, and that's what eclipses can do for us. We only have to worry about eclipses if they're within 1 or 2 degrees of your ascendant, your natal moon or your natal sun, maybe or your ascendant lord, or maybe other key planets like malefics like Saturn or Ketu or something, or Mars or something. You only worry about eclipses if they're visible, and it turns out the October eclipse is happening in the United States, the first major one since 2017, which really is a big event during the day. So that eclipse is very significant this year. We'll look at it. Eclipses may have have an impact for 6 months. They may trigger change. Now, usually you don't ever make decisions around an eclipse. I mean, suddenly, like, the eclipse happens, you feel like, oh, I'm quitting my job, I'm leaving my wife, I'm selling the kids, you know, whatever. You obviously you wait for 3 or 4 days, you know, when the nodes aren't impacting you as much, you know, and then you make decisions in the light of day. But usually decisions you make during eclipses are not really great because there's a lot of confusion from eclipses, you know, so get good advice during those kind of changes. Good to fast during an eclipse, 2 hours before and an hour afterwards, because particularly solar eclipses, because the sun governs the solar plexus, which is connected to digestion, third chakra, and if your solar plexus is eclipsed, you'd have no power to digest, and your food, you know, just sits there. I've learned this the hard way over years. I always, even if I'm hungry, if you're hungry, have a little juice or something, but I always meditate during eclipses. Whenever I eat during them, it's a disaster. I just, like, you know, I even had my secretary who knows nothing about, you know, astrology, and she came in after the solar eclipse and she said, God, my husband Gary had such horrible cramps and digestive problems. He had some cheesecake yesterday, and he was just a mess. You know, again, that was just, you know, she wasn't into astrology. She doesn't read my column, but you know, that was good verification. It was like, eclipse days may not be significant, but it will impact the planets that conjunct the eclipse point, and then if the eclipse starts going over, the planets that go over the eclipse point then get impacted. It's usually eclipse, you know, people always worry about the actual eclipse day, but it's like sometimes it's 2 weeks after the eclipse, or when the moon goes over the eclipse point again, or something gets triggered. So it's the eclipse points become toxic. So like the solar eclipse, or I think the lunar eclipse point is it's 12 Aries this year. So you know, when planets, you know, we're not going to have many planets going over 12 Aries except for Jupiter. I think Jupiter will go over 12 Aries, so that'll be kind of interesting. Solar eclipses impact the soul and are more intense than lunar eclipses. They both bring up psychological disturbances, fears and phobias, isolation, lunacy, hallucination, and negative mental energies. That's why they're really kind of feared. Mother issues and lunar eclipses more, father issues and solar eclipse issues. Eclipses over a natal planet can be very important, particularly if it's within 1 or 2 degrees. For example, eclipse over your natal Venus. Again, these things don't happen very often. Will impact the Karaka values of Venus, which might be women if you're a man and I don't have any women and your wife if you're a man, or it might influence other Venus Karaka things, like artistic expression or something. Eclipses sometimes can be good if they may stir up affairs in that houses to be healed, and they, you know, sometimes Rahu Sun eclipses with, you know, Jupiter or something. I think we have it with Jupiter this year. It may actually be quite good. It could bring, you know, depending how it hits your chart. We have a lot of Aries people in this chart. I wouldn't think it has to be really horrible this year, because Jupiter is protecting. You know, Jupiter may get spoiled a little bit, but Jupiter's going to protect that eclipse in Aries. Again, on an emotional level, eclipses are very eerie, and solar eclipses can bring rebirth of the soul, particularly if it's near your ascendant. Again, visibility of eclipse is the most important thing. So we always hear about eclipses, but if you can't see them, if they're not happening in your country, then they don't mean anything. They may mean something on the inner world. We always meditate during eclipses. We should never watch an eclipse, even if you know, we're tempted to, and the media is all over what, you know, filming it on you know, I watched the great American eclipse of 2017. I watched all these people drive to Missouri so they could see it, and the people who watched it, they had, you know, their cars wouldn't start, and they came back with all these health things, and they were just, you know, there's this kind of outward media exploitation. Oh, you have to watch the solar eclipse. They're very inauspicious, even with the glasses, the solar eclipses. It's just very inauspicious to watch them. So we always, if we meditate during eclipse, our meditations are 1,000 times more powerful, and that's what we want, the inner development. There's nothing to see, you know, it's pretty horrible, you know. The only people who like eclipses, I've noticed, are, and the people who chase eclipses are people with Rahu in the first house, and they're just obsessed with watching the eclipses. And my secretary once had Rahu in the first house, and she said, she came back, oh, did you see the eclipse? It was so amazing. It's because Rahu governs up the solar eclipse. Now, if you're a Rahu person with Rahu in the first, you're going to feel pretty good when you gobble up the sun. You're just getting all this power, right? So Rahu likes eclipses. He gobbles up the sun. It's happy. It feels powerful, you know. It's the only, you know, if you have Rahu in the first, yeah, you know, but I still wouldn't watch eclipses. They're horrible, you know. Obviously, you don't schedule important events during eclipses, even 3 or 4 days around an eclipse. Meditate. If you know, sometimes if you don't want to meditate for 3 hours during the eclipse, you know, I'll do the laundry, I'll wash the floor or something. It's just nothing important. Rahu eclipses can create expansion. Again, Rahu expands everything. Ketu is more spiritual, it takes things away. So again, you know, you just have to see what's going on. If you're Leo and Cancer rising, then eclipses are more significant. You always have to meditate during, if you're Leo or Cancer rising, pay attention to all the eclipses and meditate. If you're in a Rahu or Ketu period, they're more significant, particularly if you're in a Rahu moon or Ketu sun or Ketu moon or Ketu Rahu sun period, then yeah. So bottom line is, an eclipse may not be super significant. If you're in a Rahu or Ketu period, particularly Rahu sun, Rahu moon, or Ketu sun, Ketu moon, and Rahu and Ketu are going over your natal sun or your natal moon, then it's a once in a lifetime event, and it may have a major impact on you and the houses involved. Otherwise, it may not mean anything, you know. So people get so afraid of eclipses, and they're always good if you understand the transformational energies. This is repeating all the points that I just gave you. So here are the eclipses for this year. October 14th, it peaks at 1301, 28 Virgo and Trita Nakshatra on a Saturday. So someday, the nakshatra that the eclipse is in is important. The day of the week is important. The sign's important. Those are things that you look at, and they help you. Actually, the Vedic lunar month that the nakshatra is in is important. These are things that I could teach in a mundane astrology class. I'm not going to go there. Here's the path of the October 14th eclipse. Again, this is the most significant eclipse for the U.S. since 2017. But notice how it's impacting the western. I mean, it's visible. You see, you can tell where it's like, it's going to be very visible in Iowa where I live. But notice that the total blackout is going to be shown from Oregon to Texas. And it also goes into South America. So wherever the eclipse hits may undergo particular major transformational energy. That could be weather related. That could be a lot of things. This is an annular eclipse. So at the maximum point, this is what the eclipse will look out. There are all kinds of eclipses. We could have a whole course on them, which I'm not interested in doing. But this is the chart of the eclipse. Again, the eclipses are going to be close. I don't have the exact time here, but the eclipse is going to be when the sun and the moon are conjunct. So this is a new moon. And in this case, Ketu is still Sandhi at the edge of a sign. It's not, it's in both true node and mean node, it's still Sandhi. But it's still, this is why there are no borders in the sky. So Ketu is still about 3 or 4 degrees from the new moon here. So again, this new moon Ketu eclipse is more powerful, but again, so Jupiter is protecting it. So that's why I think it's not that bad, but what the Mercury is conjunct the moon in Virgo here. Now this is also interesting. So Mercury is at 22 degrees. The new moon's at 26 here. So when you're trying to evaluate what's going to happen in the eclipse, you see what planets are conjunct the eclipse. So Mercury, now this is interesting. This is from the Vedic text. When Mercury aspects the eclipse, is what we have. The ruling party of the country over which the eclipse runs faces unfavorable time. So that, again, I'm not being political here. I was surprised to find this in the Vedic text. So that means the Democrats are going to be in trouble following this U.S. solar eclipse. If Mercury is in the same sign as the ruler of the country, he will face trying times. So, in this case,
Does that
Biden,
mean the country will face trying times or the party?
it's saying the party. I think whenever the eclipse goes over a country, it usually has an impact for 6 months. So I suspect this solar eclipse is going to start stirring things up in the U.S. even bigger than they have been stirred up. And then there's another solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024, which also crisscrosses the United States, and that one will be huge. But in this case, Biden is not a Virgo rising or a Gemini rising, so it's, is he going to face trying times? He's certainly facing trying times at the moment, but I don't know. Who knows?
Kamala Harris is a Gemini rising.
Yeah, so maybe she'll.
I was going to ask you something about the eclipse. Someone who is born with the eclipse, when the eclipse,
they can be empowered. I mean, look at Donald Trump was born with the eclipse. Now, in some ways he has a very difficult life. I mean, people are always attacking him. He got to be president, but everybody hated him. I mean, not everybody, but I mean, it's really difficult karma. He's incredibly wealthy, but everybody's always attacking him, and he spends all his money on lawyers. I mean, I don't know if he's a happy person. I can't imagine he's a happy person. But so is the eclipse good? Well, it gave him enormous power, but with that, he's everybody's trying to take him down. I don't. You'd have to study famous people that were born during eclipses. I mean, I don't think it's in this case, I think it helped rise. It gave him more fame.
well, the other thing that I wanted to ask is when Rahu or Ketu go over your natal moon, during an eclipse. Let's say you were born with an eclipse. You brought up Donald Trump. He has a Ketu moon, which means he can somehow not like suddenly have intuition and maybe some type of psychic power. So during the eclipse, does that psychic power or intuition increases, or is it blocked?
Yes, it would increase. The question is, how much garbage is floating through the mind? If you watch your mind during a lunar eclipse, it's got all these wild fears coming up, and most of them aren't real. Now, if after the eclipse you have some aha moment about something, then you evaluate it. But most of the time, there's just a lot of garbage going on in your mind in the eclipse, and the point is not to pay attention to it. I think that'd be true for somebody born during eclipse. I mean, maybe he will be more, you know, may have this huge insight after the eclipse. I don't know.
Okay.
So here's the lunar eclipse, which is 2 weeks later. It's also on a Saturday. It's happening at 12 degrees Aries. If you have key planets at 12 degrees Aries, you know, go into the bomb shelter. No, I'm just teasing, just meditate. It's an Ashvini. It's a full moon. Here's the chart. Again, notice how, in this case, the nodes are still Sandhi, which means we just learned about Sandhi nodes. They're like crazy. So I think this lunar eclipse is going to feel crazy. And look how many planets are on the eclipse axis. In you know, the stock market, and I was around when this happened in October 19th, 1987, had a very similar configuration. It had all the planets lined up on the 1-7 axis here, and Jupiter was in Aries. I could pull it up for you. So I suspect, you know, look, the sun is exact point of debilitation by 1 day. This is a pretty ominous eclipse. Mars and Mercury are together here, which creates a lot of fighting and stuff like that. This is a pretty ominous eclipse. And again, how it impacts you, it depends on your dasha. You know, what I'm saying is, for mundane astrology, I don't like either of these eclipses. You know, this one is going to this one's not as much in the United States. Notice, you know, it's just at probably around sunset when the moon's coming up. Maybe New England will see it visible. So it's not impacting the U.S. as much unless you're living in New England. But and again, that's just kind of a partial part of the eclipse. You see where the shadow is. With the full eclipse, and if you're in Europe, if you know, the full extent of the eclipse will be felt. You know, it'll be night in Europe and Asia and Africa and India and Australia, and people will be impacted by it more. The lunar eclipses aren't as important as solar eclipses. Okay, so time for all good Jyotish students to rest. If you want to work on Ketu transits, I didn't write the notes on them. You could, I didn't teach you the principles how to figure them out, but you could certainly do that. Next week, we'll probably do Saturn and Jupiter transits, and Saturn returns, and Saturn and Satisat. So that's what I tentatively have plays. How many people have watched the extra tapes? There's no point in my reviewing them until people watch them. I might do that for the extra class on a Sunday. How many of you, you don't have to feel guilty, like we all have. I'm taking this relationship course. I'm 3 tapes behind. I can't, you know, that's why I go to them live, because I never can fit them in to watch. How many, if you could let me know how many of you, and again, I promise not to send a note to your mom or dad, or, you know, but let me know, just email me and let me know how many you've watched. And let's see if we can, you know, they're important topics: retrogrades, exalted and debilitated planets. The additional lesson on conjunctions is was given to you. So they're very important topics. They're part of the course. I just wanted to make sure I covered new material, and you know, soon we'll be moving into 3 or 4 lessons on nakshatras and transits. So but let me know how many you've watched, and let me just say that you know, we definitely have to have that review lesson by the first week of August. So you can definitely get them done. Okay. If not, you know, your parents are going to get a note, right?
Barry, I'll email you. I still cannot find them.
Okay, I can send them again. I sent them in Dropbox, and then you just have to copy the Dropbox link and then download them. Or if you have Dropbox, you can transfer them into your own personal Dropbox.
Yeah, I was having a hard time finding them as well, Barry. If you could resend,
I will resend them again. And I've sent them twice, and I will send them in. And I get it. I get so many emails. If I don't, and I'll tell you my secret, if you get an email, even if you're busy, try to do it in the moment, because by the time you try to find it again, it's gone, you know?
Yeah.
So that's my thing. It's just like, don't do emails twice. And what happens if I don't have time, I print the email off, which takes half a second. And then I have a pile of emails that I have to do, and I find them in my stack, and I go back and do them. And that's how I personally have decided to manage the craziness of our media world, you know.
I'm sorry, about Dropbox. I'm not quite sure what it is, because you said that you would the class I bought, and I'm talking about something about Yogi Point, and I never received it. But you were supposed to send it to Dropbox, but I do not know what it is.
Okay, I'm trying to remember what I promised you. The Yogi, I might have, and I do apologize. I do have a class on Yogi Points. And you have so much to watch. I can send that to you if you want to watch the class on Yogi Points.
Yeah, I purchased it.
I can do that.
But I do not know what Dropbox is, so maybe that's why I
Okay,
didn't.
so, right. So with Dropbox, you might get an email from them, and it says Applied Vedic Astrology has sent you some material to download. And sometimes it goes in spam because Dropbox has, you know, multi-millions of emails that it sends out. So when you get the email, you click on it, and it allows you to download the videotapes and books and articles to your hard drive. And then you have to save them. Usually they go in the download folder, and then you have to put them someplace you can find them.
Oh, but
So,
I never received email from Dropbox.
and it's possible that I think you joined the class kind of late. I may have missed getting you that, and I do apologize. Did you get I sent you the ephemeris books also?
Yes. Everything related to this class, and email from your email I receive. But
Okay.
something
Okay, so
about download.
here's what I'm going to do. As I'm going to end the class, I'm going to resend them, which means they're going to pop up in your email at the top, or they're going to go into your spam filter at the top. So look for it. It'll be there in like 5 minutes, and then download them. Now, if they don't come, then let me know.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
And I have this problem too. If I'm a little irritated, I'm not irritated. I've been going all day since 5 a.m. and I have the same problems you do. The relationship class is sending all these things and I can't find them. So I get it. Okay.
Barry, Christine, yeah,
Okay.
I just have one last thing. Next, we're talking about the Saturn transit. I'm really interested in the planet transit triggering depression. So I don't know whether you can touch base a little bit.
I do talk about that. Yeah, I will talk about
Okay.
that. There are remedies.
Yeah.
I have to remember to add the remedies for Saturn transits. Yeah. I do have a lot I do them all the time. They're very important. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good question. Okay, guys, have fun. Watch your extra tapes. No excuses. I'm sending them again. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.